Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so this episode finally reveals where Diavolo has actually been hiding out in the past episode. What we find out is that he is indeed piggybacking off of one of the members of Team Bucciarati, but which one is ultimately the mystery of the episode, and that's what the gang has to figure out. And sure enough, it starts off by revealing that Doppio is actually the one inside of Bucciarati's body and is actually currently in the process of dying. And he alone is the one who knows where Diavolo is hiding. He knows that Diavolo is hiding because Diavolo told him that he would be leaving because things were going south, and then proceeds to move to another body. And of course, as it turns out, Doppio is happy about the fact that the boss was able to get close enough to everybody to actually hide. And that he was close enough to actually hide, and concludes that if the boss is indeed as closer than the Team Bucciarati thinks he is, then they have a good chance. But then, as he lays dying in the Coliseum, admits that he also is a bit lonely and wishes the boss would call him one last time. But even though it's established how the phone calls actually work, and we know he's not getting another call, he's just gonna die sad and alone, which is depressing. But it then picks up immediately after where the previous one were left off, where Polnareff has since picked up the arrow and once again insists that Misa needs to pierce the Sex Pistols with it so that he can gain Sex Pistols Requiem. But which is a cool idea for Stan, but unfortunately I don't think that doesn't actually wind up happening in the episode. But yeah, in case Chariot Requiem begins to charge at Polnareff, and of course Misa immediately panics because he thinks that Chariot Requiem is actually coming for him. But then Polnareff clarifies, revealing that since he and Coco Jumbo's body actually wound up picking up the arrow, that Chariot Requiem is coming after him and making a beeline for him. So of course Chariot Requiem, it's at this point where Misa is prepared to actually figure out how to actually fire the gun and how to actually defend Polnareff, and eventually pulls out his gun. But as he's about to fire, the chamber of the gun breaks and falls out, and he immediately and it's at this point where Misa panics because he quickly realizes that that's not going to actually keep Polnareff safe, and he also but reveals that he also picked up the cop's Glock, the cop's gun ahead of previously when the criminal in the cop's body attacked him, essentially thinking he was Trish. But he did wind up taking it and is able to fend off Chariot Requiem that way. But of course Chariot Requiem isn't able to move, is kind of recovering from its attack. But it's at this point where Misa does in fact wonder what exactly happened to the gun, and also yells at the Sex Pistols for not informing him that the gun was broken. And of course, and it's at this point where number 5 suggests that maybe it was the boss that had something to do with it, which of course everybody perks up and panics a little bit, because they obviously realize that maybe that if that's possible, the boss could have done something. But then what the other Sex Pistols berate number 5 for even suggesting that, pointing out that they simply put didn't have enough time to actually perform maintenance on the gun, and Misa had been using it a lot lately, so they point out that it was most likely metal fatigue and it had just broke on its own. And at which point they decide to drop it. But in the meantime, Chariot Requiem does eventually recover and manages to pick up the arrow, but continues to go after Polnareff, which of course Misa doesn't fully understand how that makes any sense, and picks up Coco Jumbo and carries him away, but doesn't know why Chariot Requiem is actually still going after him. And it's at this point where Polnareff explains that it seems like it doesn't really matter if Chariot Requiem got the arrow back or not, since somebody was able to successfully pick up the arrow, it's going to just pursue him relentlessly until he finishes him off. So in order to get as far away from Chariot Requiem, Misa then proceeds to climb up a light post and and is prepared seemingly out of the range of Chariot Requiem. But and at this point makes preparations to throw the turtle and to play a bit of hot potato with Chariot Requiem. But it's at this point where Chariot Requiem's arm emerges out of the light post and swats Coco Jumbo out of Trish's arms specifically, but out of Misa's grasp, and he winds up landing on the ground. But then Chariot Requiem suddenly backs off its attack and just leaves, and no one fully understands why Chariot Requiem didn't kill Polnareff, but it's clear that something is going on, and that the stance of behavior is a little bit erratic. But it's at this point where Polnareff then proceeds to explain exactly what's going on, and that he openly admits this once again. But he points out that Chariot Requiem, that there are a lot of abilities that, as he said, Chariot Requiem, he doesn't know the full extent of Chariot Requiem because he only summoned it the one time, and it was only very briefly, and he immediately desummoned it. So he has no idea what a lot of its abilities are, but he does note that it seems like the true nature of its abilities is starting to awaken, and that it's beginning to happen. And when Misa asks for clarification, Polnareff then turns Coco Jumbo's head to reveal that an Eldritch Abomination is emerging out of Coco Jumbo's side, and then he reveals that this is actually the true nature of Chariot Requiem's soul swapping ability, and that's that's ultimate end goal now that it's gone berserk, is to replace human souls with something. It's not necessarily known what exactly it replaces them with, just something. And sure enough, as Chariot Requiem is walking through the streets, it quickly becomes apparent that this range is going to just spread indefinitely the longer everybody's under the effect of Chariot Requiem, and that they need to deal with it quickly. And a couple of civilians have already started to become affected. Their faces have started to warp and contwist into eldritch horrors, and it's quickly becoming apparent that there's something that they need to deal with Chariot Requiem quickly. And of course Polnareff points out that they do need to work quickly because the longer their swapped bodies, the more likely it is that their bodies are eventually going to further mutate into Eldritch Abominations. And sure enough, case in point, Trish holds up Misa's hand to discover that Misa's hand has already started to gnarl into a disfigured claw, and notes that they seems like they don't have much time. And also begins to worry because her body is starting to break down, and she starts panicking about that. And but of course, is at this point where Bruno, once again in Diavolo's body, does reassure her, pointing out that they will deal with Chariot Requiem quickly, and but also wonders out loud how much far this ability has started to spread. And of course, it's at this point where they do indeed start following after Chariot Requiem, and then it's revealed that the boss is sure enough very much tagging along, and is observing the entire thing through his King Crimson. He's just watching everything, and just and reveals that he's actually waiting for them to actually get close enough to Chariot Requiem so that he can take the arrow for himself. And sure enough, he's just silently observing because he knows that the group is eventually going to just lead him right to it, and he'll be able to swipe the arrow when nobody's the wiser. But it's at this point where Giorno actually stops everyone and tells everyone not to move and to immediately separate. And of course, everybody starts looking at him like funny because they don't fully understand where his mindset is going. But it is of course at this point where Giorno tells everybody that he's seemingly figured out what exactly is going on with the boss, and has since figured out what's going on. And of course he currently has Misa's old gun, the one that broke. And tells everybody that he has been thinking about what Sex Pistol number 5 has said, and that maybe the gun did break because of King Crimson. But of course, Misa reassures him that it's not, and also insists that it couldn't be a thing because the Sex Pistols were very clear, and he and the Sex Pistols did work out that it was in fact metal fatigue, and that if that's what happened, then that's how it broke. But of course, Giorno points out that it isn't that clear, and that he does note that the gun doesn't seem to be fitting together, and of course one of the Sex Pistols does pipe up that that the gun is most likely not fitting together because there's a piece missing, and that a piece broke off somewhere, and that's why it broke. But of course, Giorno points out that he already knew about that, and that he figures that if he can find the remaining piece, that they can confirm whether or not it was broken through metal fatigue or if somebody sabotaged the gun on purpose. And sure enough, Giorno reveals that he actually used a piece of the gun to create a mole, to turn into a mole. And the mole, and remarking that the moles can't see very well, but they have excellent sense of smell. And sure enough, the mole does come back with a missing piece of Misa's gun, and then returns back to normal. And it's revealed that the piece of the gun that broke off was in fact snapped off by somebody else. And of course, Misa does take this as proof positive that somebody did indeed sabotage his gun. But of course, this causes everybody this causes the boss to kind of panic a little bit, because now Giorno has kind of figured out a secret and has figured out that he's hiding amongst them. But of course, Giorno has since logicked out that even though Misa insists otherwise, since nobody could have gotten close, that it doesn't really matter if they were close or not, since he points out that it seems that if Polnareff's theory about the boss being a split personality is right, that means that he is most likely inhabiting somebody else's body, which of course means that they can easily inhabit and hop around other people's bodies and just kind of hide amongst them. But and this would also enable him to mask himself by hiding amongst somebody else so that nobody can sense him. And specifically Trish, since she can sense when he's out and about. But of course, Misa wonders how exactly it is that he knows about this. But of course, Giorno merely points out that it seems like Diavolo attacked Narancia as well, because somebody got close to him and then proceeded to kill him unknowingly. Which of course realizes that they need to figure out who exactly Diavolo is hiding inside. And it's at this point where Misa points out that maybe it was Polnareff, since obviously if he was hiding inside Coco Jumbo, that there would absolutely be somebody hiding inside that would absolutely make perfect sense. But it is at this point where Giorno points out that that doesn't really make any sense, because Chariot Requiem almost killed Polnareff because the gun failed. And Giorno knows for a fact that the boss would not risk his own safety to kill Polnareff, and he concludes that it's most likely in somebody else. But and of course also confirms this by using Gold Experience to scan Coco Jumbo's body and confirm that there is in fact only one soul. But when Misa insists how Giorno actually knows all of this, and how he's able to determine that there's only one soul, Giorno points out that life energy is simply an additive thing, and that he can actually tell when there's excess of it. The way it's explained is that he can tell when there's excess life energy in somebody. Case in point, if there's a second soul or not, because there should only be one life energy for somebody at any given time. So he can easily text when somebody's hiding. But of course, it's at this point. But of course, he does point out that in order to actually test where Diavolo is hiding, he will need to get close to somebody and test their abilities and use his abilities to test whether somebody's nearby. And of course decides to actually start. And of course when Misa wonders how he's actually going to be able to tell when that's going to happen, he then reveals that he actually has picked up a trick from Polnareff, revealing that he has since figured out how to actually tell King Crimson's time ability by biting his finger and letting the drops bleed onto his hand. And of course reveals that he's going to be starting with Misa, but Misa actually becomes very defensive and insists that Giorno doesn't get anywhere near him, for the very simple reason that they don't know if Giorno's clean either. And of course, Giorno justifies this by the fact that he's probably the only one who's safe, because he obviously he slipped right back into Narancia's body and it was empty. So he slipped out of Narancia's body and it was empty. So So the fact that nobody was hiding inside of Naranja's body means that he's likely safe, and there's probably nobody inside, but inside of him. But of course, Misa once again insists that Giorno doesn't get anywhere closer because, once again, Giorno really doesn't have any real way of verifying whether or not his soul has been taken over, has been hijacked by King Crimson, and of course insists that if Giorno can't run a proof positive thing that he's not in fact possessed, then he shouldn't be getting anywhere close to it. But eventually Bucciarati breaks it up and tells Giorno that he's more than welcome to test him. Which of course Diavolo throughout all of this is just fuming because he's realized now that Giorno has seen through all of his tricks and all of his tactics, and is very upset. And Misa knows this as well, pointing out that if anybody gets close to anybody else, that King Crimson will likely come out and attack and try to defend himself if Giorno's theory is in fact right. And sure enough, Giorno gets close to Diavolo's body to test if Bucciarati has more than one soul inside with him. And he does get close, and then it's revealed, and then several more drops of blood appear on Giorno's hand, and you realize time has been skipped. So and of course, right on cue, it's revealed that yes, King Crimson was in fact hiding, and he was in fact hiding in Misa's body alongside Trish, and proceeds to attack Giorno and and punch his hand off so that he can't actually touch anybody, and winds up badly injuring him. Which of course, it's at this point where Trish tries to come to Giorno's defense and summons Spice Girl, but it's at this point where it's revealed that was exactly what Diavolo was waiting for all along. It's revealed that Diavolo, it was explained that Diavolo obviously he can't fully manifest himself and can only manifest himself through his stand. So he isn't able to actually actively control someone else's body. But then reveals that he's able to grab a hold of Spice Girl, which because stands are inflicted by equal wounds inflicted by either on the stand or on the user. Because that's how stands are mostly established to work. Stands are it's revealed that because of that, Diavolo is able to use Spice Girl to puppeteer Mista's body and make it move. Which means that now he can actually, and by this point, Chariot Requiem has long since wandered away. But now Diavolo reveals that now he has the ability to actually chase after Chariot Requiem directly, and immediately runs off to go and find Chariot Requiem. And of course, this is this point where everybody realizes that Diavolo is very much decisive and has a plan in place, and that he does in fact plan to actually close the difference between himself and Chariot Requiem, and also knows how to defeat it. And of course they do. Of course, they all look at Chariot Requiem. They all look for Chariot Requiem. They all try and figure out how to actually catch up to Diavolo. And of course, Bucciarati insists that Misa shoot Diavolo and defeat him to keep him from moving and incapacitating and trying to destroy Chariot Requiem and get the arrow. But and of course, it initially seems like Misa is actually hesitating and unable to actually move after him. But it's then revealed that actually Misa did in fact fire 6 shots. He fired all six of his shots, and that currently they're all chasing after Diavolo, who's using his time skip to actually just avoid getting hit by all of the shots. So they're unable to actually land, and eventually he does arrive at where Chariot Requiem is, and it's at this point where it's revealed how Chariot Requiem actually works, and it's revealed why Chariot Requiem is able to make somebody attack themselves. And it's at this point where it reveals that depending on where he is and where he's currently moving, the shadow of that Chariot Requiem casts is actually very different. It's actually differently positioned and will move depending on where he is. So he knows that Chariot Requiem, the way it moves, is that it's he confirms that from different perspectives it will actually change appearances, and that the man on the other side of the street, if he's looking at Chariot Requiem, it will actually appear as if the arrow is moving toward Diavolo and Mista, and also Trish. But concluding that, he then concludes that that Chariot Requiem is actually very much the shadow of someone's own soul, and that in order to actually defeat Chariot Requiem, he has to figure out how to stop the shadow from actually being cast, and eventually concludes that the weak point of Chariot Requiem and how to successfully defeat it and take it down is by smashing is that the true form of Chariot Requiem is actually a little light behind his head, which it's actually a little small light that is meant to cast a shadow and create Chariot Requiem. And sure enough, he then smashes that, and Chariot Requiem begins to collapse as the gang eventually catches up, and they quickly realize what Diavolo has done. But now he actually winds up having the arrow, and he actually has the arrow and is able to do something with it. But of course, reveals that now that he has it, he's now able to use it to fully evolve, to further evolve his stand and become more powerful. And concludes that now that he knows the secret of the arrow and how it works, he can finally use it as according to his fate, and believing that he will actually one day, and that he will actually continue to become the most powerful stand user ever, and that's because he was able to conquer his past. But then it's revealed that Giorno actually did in fact have a plan, and that's even though Diavolo actually wound up punching off his arm, not only was Giorno able to improvise by healing himself with one of his brooches, but also reveals that now that there's blood on King Crimson's arm, he can actually use that to his advantage. And sure enough, uses his stand ability to turn the blood droplets from Giorno's blood that are on King Crimson's arm into ants, which then proceed to eat the arrow, or eat through the stock of the arrow, and cause it to fall out of King Crimson's hands. And Diavolo panics because it's clear the arrow has actually that he now needs to go after the arrow. And it's at this point where Misa takes full advantage of the fact that King Crimson is currently distracted to try and shoot the arrow further away from him so that they can retrieve it. But of course, then fires several shots at Diavolo, which Diavolo then accidentally redirects back into the arrow. And Misa concludes that his prediction was in fact right, that Diavolo wasn't able to actually get close, wasn't actually able to actually pick up the arrow, wasn't actually able to predict where the bullets were going, but that ultimately, even with his time skip, the arrow was actually going to go flying anyway. But it's at this point where Diavolo reveals that he actually did plan ahead, and threw a body in his path to actually get Diavolo to actually get the arrow to come back to him. And sure enough, Misa actually accidentally winds up shooting his civilian because of this. But because of that, Diavolo is able to gloat about the fact that he now has Misa's ability is in fact trash, and that he expected nothing more from a former underling of his. But that also addressed Bucciarati directly and tells him that he's a little disappointed that Bucciarati wound up betraying the organization, but also points out that because of that, they have actually been a bit of a thorn in his side. But also but also points out that in the end their attempts were futile, and that now he's going to be able to take the arrow for himself, and that they have officially lost. But it's at this point where actually several strands of whatever wind up emerging from King Crimson's hand and cause the arrow to go scattering and flying over Misa's head and into Giorno's waiting hands. And of course, it's at this point where it's revealed that despite being brutally harmed by King Crimson, Trish is still very much conscious inside of Misa's body, and reveals that actually King Crimson didn't deflect any of the bullets aimed at herself and Diavolo, and that in actuality, the bullets were actually, she used her Spice Girl to soften the bullets and turn them into the consistency of taffy, which of course caused the bullets to just kind of go flying, and he wind up hitting the arrow and sending it back to the party. And she declares that while she understands her father is never going to fully understand her and is always going to continue to try and kill her, she does declare that she will overcome it, and she will be victorious alongside her friends. And so this point where Diavolo points out that he's a little surprised by his daughter's newfound sense of confidence, and but also points out that she's made him very angry. And then proceeds to punch Spice Girl, which, yeah, he winds up injuring himself in the process, but he's also able to send Misa's body flying in front of the arrow, and so that Misa and Giorno aren't able to grab it. And of course declares that he knows that his daughter has actually developed a newfound resolve to actually grab the arrow, but also points out that they underestimate his resolve as well, and and his desire to conquer the past is ultimately stronger than anything they can throw at him. And then it ends with King Crimson seemingly getting in the path of the arrow and is about to be pierced by it. So yeah, this episode ultimately does conclude confirm where King Crimson and Diavolo were hiding, but it also sets up the final battle where it's maybe are they going to actually be able to defeat King Crimson now or not? That's going to be a very interesting thing, because obviously they're not going to be able to defeat Diavolo without the arrow. He's been established to be pretty much invincible, and the only way they're going to be able to beat him is with a Requiem stand. So yeah, I am curious how they're actually going to be able to defeat him. So because obviously Diavolo has been established to basically be invincible. He can predict the future. He can erase time within the time frame of the future he's predicted. He's just overall very powerful, very dangerous. But I am in fact curious how he's going to actually prevail against. Well, not necessarily, but I'm interested to see how the heroes are going to prevail against him, because obviously they set up the fact that he's invincible and nobody can touch him. So I'm interested to see where that's going to go, but it does establish that they do have a bit of a risk in that they need to get the arrow away from Diavolo now, and it seems like it's very close to being in the path of the arrow, so it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a bit of a toss-up as to whether or not he gets pierced by the arrow or not. But yeah, I am interested to see how that's going to go, but for the time being, thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. I mostly use the fun projects, but just go check that out. And also be sure to check out my Twitter. I post updates over there, so be sure to go check that out. Be sure to go check out my, Go check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. The top video is the most recent one, whereas the bottom video is based on what you've already seen. And it may or may not, and I don't really know where they're going to send you, so please just go check them out. And finally, go check out my Discord, because if you want to connect with me, just go do that. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. As next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!